Hi, everyone out there. Welcome to our District 30 election pop-up tonight. So this is going to be a little bit of a fireside chat with the Republican candidate, PM Azinga. Shirley Templo, who is the Democrat candidate in the race, did actually not respond to any of our requests for her to join us tonight. So we're going to use this time to then get to know PM a little bit more and find out what she is interested in running for the legislature this year. So tell us, PM, just introduce yourself a bit and talk about yourself and what you're all about.
I'd love to do that, but may I digress a little bit? First of all, I want to thank you, Mahalo, for having this forum, particularly on September the 17th, 2024, because today is National Voter Registration Day. Did you know that? And so I thought, oh gosh, did they know how nice they were to ask me to do that on this day? And I said, gosh. And you know, this is a time not only for voter registration, but to make sure to vote, make sure to update your addresses and all those kinds of things. Ask or request for your absentee ballot if you need it. Also, trying to find out the issues related to the candidates and those general issues and how they affect your family, your community, your state, and your nation. And it says approximately like 244 million Americans have the opportunity to vote in this election. And I think that that is wonderful and a right that we really should pursue. But just as a reminder, I think that before one, before one revotes, you need to really vote before one falls or before one deals with a storm. We need to deal with reform. And before one falls, we need to have recalls. So those are the things that are very important, and it's all about voting. And so I just wanted to do that real quick segment, if you don't mind.
I think we're on the same page. So there you go.
In terms of the question you were asking me, I'm a military brat that gives back. My dad was stationed in SAC, Strategic Air Command, throughout Asia, Japan, Okinawa, and Thailand. And so I traveled with my family. We had the opportunity to be the face of Americans. And oftentimes that doesn't happen except at the point of a gun. So fortunately, we were able to do that. We learned the importance of a smile. We learned the importance of foreign language. We learned the importance of getting involved in one's community and taking an interest in the people and the culture that are there. So I spent a lot of time in Japan growing up, my formative years. Spent a lot of time in Okinawa. Okinawa daisuki desu. I'm crazy about Okinawa. And one reason is that it has blue-green water. Have you ever seen blue-green water? And then it gets darker as it goes out. So as a child, I remember we loved Okinawa so much that my dad said, okay, we're going to buy a car. What color would we like to make the car? Because we were kids and all that kind of stuff. And my dad asked us. And I said, my sister and I looked at each other, the color of Okinawa water, Daddy. That was a no-brainer. Yes, that's what we wanted. But that kind of led a lifestyle. In terms of my beginning involvement in politics, I can remember that as early as 7 years old. At the time, we were living with our great aunt in Washington, D.C., 2711 Georgia Avenue Northwest, the side door to a historical black college entitled Howard University. And one Sunday, all of these people were coming into our great aunt's house, and they were dressed in their Sunday going meeting clothes. At that time, the women wore gloves, matching purse and shoes, crinoline crinoline dresses. The men wore Quo Vadis haircuts, spit shine shoes, ties and dress shoes and dress pants and all that kind of stuff. And we were wondering, why are all these people inside the house right now? They're strangers and all that kind of stuff. And my dad actually sat us down. At that time, we were on, they had horses, TV hobby horses, where it was like a pillow. And it looked like a horse, and the kids would sit on it while we were watching television. And my dad sat us down on the horses, and he said, well, we're doing something historical. I said, oh, what? And he said, well, we're going to go meet a man at the reflecting pool, a pastor at a reflecting pool. And I was saying, oh, because I kind of knew where the reflecting pool was. Because, when you're in those areas, you start to learn all the places, the memorials and all that kind of stuff. And his name was Martin Luther King. So my parents participated in the March on Washington. And so when as kids, that led and etched an indelible memory actually in my mind. They told us that they were marching for jobs and against police brutality and for employment and access to hotels and education and all those kinds of things. So they got us right there, and they made us sit down and watch the conventions. My parents had a requirement that if you're going to watch cartoons, which Saturday morning kids love, you're going to have to watch something educational or something like that. And we were an old school family. We sat down and ate one meal. My mom wasn't a short order cook. She cooked one thing for everybody to eat. And we sat down and had different conversations. And of course, the parents were asking us, okay, what did you learn in school today? And all those kinds of things. So that's the kind of background that I came from in my formative years.
So catch us up a little bit on how you got here to Hawaii, how long you've been here, and what you're doing here now. And then we'll maybe dive into some questions.
All right. Fast forward real quick. As I said, we're an old school family, and we sat down for dinner, all at 5 or 6 o'clock. All of us had responsibilities, either set the table, cook, whatever, wash the dishes. And my dad said, I think we were at Scott Air Force Base at the time. He said, I have a question to ask you. Now, my dad is a Texan, 6'5", soft-spoken, only want to tell you something once. And I said, he had a question to ask. I'm thinking, okay, I don't smoke. I don't go into the bathroom, skip school. I don't have any problems with the principal and all that kind of stuff. What in the world is he going to ask me, Because I started to sweat. And he said, well, where would you like to graduate high school from? He said, your choices are Wiesbaden, Germany, London, England, or Honolulu, Hawaii. And my sister and I looked at each other. Hawaii, Daddy. I was like, you have to ask, because we were crazy about water, the sea, and the ocean, and all that kind of stuff. And I told you about Okinawa and all that kind of stuff. So that's how I got here. I graduated from Arthur W. Radford High School. Go Rams! And from there, I started Leeward Community College, and I transferred to UH Manoa. But Manoa did not have, being a military brat, I wanted something related to international relations. Manoa didn't have anything like that. So I had to transfer to the mainland, and I transferred to East Coast. I got accepted into a diplomatic school. I don't know whether you know anything about Washington, D.C. schools. They have a consortium. So if you're getting admitted into one school, you have the choice of going and taking classes to over 20 different schools. So that's kind of, and I came, worked my way back, was involved in politics. My parents my mom wanted to settle, and we bought a house in Arizona. And from there, I had an opportunity to be nominated for a position in DC then I interned and did fellows and all those kinds of things. And I worked my way back across the United States to California and had an opportunity to be recruited to go to China. And I taught in China for 5 years. And then I wanted to, because I had the language of Japanese and I had the language of Mandarin, I wanted to go someplace that I could really use those skills. So I came back home. I came back to Hawaii and have been here for over, 15 something years, and been very active in my community, over 20 different nonprofit organizations related to health. I've been a registered lobbyist, involved with the chancellors, UH Manoa's chancellor sessions. I have done lobbying at the Hawaii Board of Education related to various issues. And so I'm home, and there's work to be done here. People say, well, why don't you go to the mainland? You might have more opportunities. I'm saying, honey, the work needs to be done here.
So, so what made you decide to run for the legislature? And is this your first time? Are you a first-time candidate?
Actually, this is my second time.
Okay.
And what made me decide to run for the office is 2 or 3 things. I honestly believe that from whom much is given, much is expected. The only reason why you're blessed is to bless others. And that I believe that there is no greater challenge, no greater honor than to be in public service.
So it's interesting that you started your chat tonight with talking about voter registration and sort of a get out the vote thing and stuff. People here just don't seem to want to participate in the process, and I'm just wondering what you think about that, and with all of your experience and working in the public sector, what would you do as a legislator to try and change people's minds and get them to participate?
Well, there are a number of things. I think the importance of voting should be communicated at formative ages, not just, you're 25 years old. Now just don't share information about being a voter or voting or you're 18. No, we need to communicate the importance of that. Part of it, the importance of education is to educate a citizenry that participates. And the most important way of participating in your daily life as a citizen, and we as a country ask so very little, is to vote, to go out there. Particularly in my experience as being young, people literally died to have this privilege to vote. Being and working in China, I had the opportunity to see people who don't have that prerogative, don't have that freedom of speech, no freedom of religion or anything like that. There were experiences where if you wanted to even go to church, you had to be willing to relinquish your passport. There's a difference between being in a collective society and a society that requires groupthink. And you don't really appreciate that until you see otherwise, and it's hitting you in the face on a daily basis.
And then what prompted you to run as a Republican? What is it about the Republican Party here in Hawaii, which, as we know, doesn't get a lot of traction? So what prompted you to just go down that way?
Well, first of all, a lot of people don't know Hawaii's history. The elites and most of the Hawaiians, up until a certain year, 1920s, even after that, it was it Kalakaua or Kapiolani? No, who was it that was the representative for the state of Hawaii? It was,
That was Prince Jonah Kalani, Kuhio, I'm sorry.
Keehi. Okay, and prior to that, most Hawaiian citizenry, it's particularly the elite, were all Republicans. And things changed as a result of, after he passed, there was a radical difference. And a lot of that had to do with union participation and people protesting for better wages and all those kinds of things. I come from, I'm not just a newbie, I come from a line of Republicans. My grandfather was a Republican. My dad was a Republican. Remember I told you my dad was from Texas.
Right.
And he was also a pastor's child and all that kind of stuff. But I really began to research what the Republican Party was all about. What did they do in terms of my experience here in America? A lot of people don't know that they broke up the civil rights filibuster. That was one of the laws that was prohibiting African Americans to even vote. They were against slavery because one of the reasons why was because there was an inequity in terms of labor, and there was one party that was getting free labor, and they wanted to maintain that institution of slavery. And the Republicans spoke out against that. Republicans founded of the 101 historical black colleges that when African Americans could not attend predominantly white institutions, the Republicans went out and actually founded several historical black colleges. So there were a number of reasons, that I looked in terms of policy and all those types of things. So specific reasons.
So given all that, what is it that you would like to do in the legislature here? What are the key issues?
Well, there are a number of them. If I'm honored to be the representative of Hawaii Legislative District 30, there are a number of things. We want to, and it's basically revolves around my policy. My policy is about the economy, education, and the environment. The economy, education, and environment. And as a result of COVID, that really hit us in the pocket. That really stopped a lot of businesses coming from Hawaii. We suffered in hotel reservations. We suffered in airplane bookings. We suffered in restaurant bookings. There were so many layoffs and all that kind of stuff. So COVID was actually a wake-up call to us in terms of how our economy works. Do we want to prioritize, or do we want our main economic engine to be about the tourism industry, or do we need to diversify? Are we compelled to diversify? And I believe we do. It's imperative that we do so. However, if we do decide to continue that Hawaii is economic engine, is tourism, then we really need to step up our game and make it tourism that is par excellence. I've got some suggestions that I would love to have us do. For example, I think we could do underwater hotels. We have never done anything like that. Places like Dubai, people travel thousands of miles to do an underwater. We've got beautiful oceans, and beautiful flora and vegetation and all that kind of stuff. We could do underwater hotels. We could do Tantalus zip rides. Have you ever been to Tantalus? The orchids and the ginger is so powerful during the summertime. It's like you can get drunk off of it. Just, imagine doing a zip ride through Tantalus. Another thing that I think we could be able to do is because we've got clean water, we've got 365 days of sunshine, I think we could do an Olympic training ground. All sports, water, we've got We could do the surfing, the boating, all of these kinds of things. It's just that we haven't had maybe the leadership or the vision to be able to move forth with this. I'm not saying eradicate tourism. I'm saying diversify, and that we can be able to do something like those things. In terms of education, you know, we've been hit with a teacher shortage for 10 years plus. I came back from China and they were telling me, oh, the kids don't go to school on Friday. What? I think they were joking. Oh no, and I said, the mothers didn't protest? The mothers didn't march on the Capitol? I mean, we're challenged with our scores right now. I'm also, remember, I'm joking from an education background. We're challenged with our scores now. Why would we allow this to happen? It drops us off, and it lowers our ability. And our kids, when given the resources, our kids are brilliant. You know, if given the resources and the teacher and the commitment and all those kinds of things. One of the things I suggest for us to overcome our teacher shortage is going back to some of the HBCUs. We have 101 HBCUs, of which 75 of them have teacher education programs, and they produce 4,000 teachers. Should we have a shortage of teachers if we have connected or can connect with that resource? Another thing is military wives. Military wives are in need of being employed. The average E5 barely makes food. There is a military food instability program or issue going on there. We could be hiring our military spouses by giving them national credentialing. So no matter where they go, they could be able to plug in to the schools that are in that district. We can grow our own teachers, starting not in high school, but starting all the way in terms of parents having conversations with kids and putting that seed in their memory as early as elementary. You know, if they see something that they respect or a model, you know, maybe the teachers in the classrooms in elementary can be able to talk to them saying, you know, I'm a teacher because I love students and I want to be able to empower you because you're going to be citizens of the next generation. Would you consider even being a teacher? You know, I know you're in elementary school, but look at some of the things that they do. And if you like some of the things that we do, maybe you could volunteer to do some things like that. I mean, we need to catch them as quickly as we possibly can. One of the things that I saw in China is that's different from America, is that if they have an excellent student in college, they don't let them walk out the door. They snatch them and offer them a job. I'm talking a brand new college graduate who's maybe excellence in mathematics. You're excellent in mathematics. Had you considered maybe teaching at this university? We should not let our talent walk away.
So you have lots of creative ideas. So let's take the military wives helping in schools, for instance. How would you accomplish that in the legislature? What would you do? How would you bring that about?
Facilitating national credentialing. And allowing them to be certified and allowing that certification, or if they came from another state, that they were teachers, and having something that affords or also gives credence to their credentials that they have. And if they need to take 1 or 2 classes to be upgraded to our standard, then have them do so. It's just our talent. We have the talent, we just don't have the connection. There's another way as well. I noticed that here in Hawaii, I told you I'm a product of a military environment. Okay, they have something that's called DODEA, which is schools that are primarily the dependent schools, Department of Defense, education schools that are for dependents. In other words, when a military serviceman woman takes his child to Japan, Okinawa, Thailand, wherever, all throughout Europe, all throughout Latin America, wherever there's a military base, they have schools for the dependent children. I noticed that here in Hawaii, our schools, UH Manoa, Chaminade, the West Oahu complex and all that kind of stuff, they have not placed their names on the registry for our students who complete their bachelor's or whatever, that they can go to those schools throughout the world and do their teacher practicums, because the practicums are limited to here. If you're a child that has gotten your degree and you only need a practicum to be able to get into the classroom, well, make that beeline, make that pathway. And this has existed for over 10 years. They have not been on the registries, and we need to register all of our schools that have education, schools of education, so that they can go to the practicums and go other places and then come back to Hawaii and teach. There is no reason. Right now, it's limited to how many practicums are available at the time. We shouldn't be limited to that.
Let's talk about Kalihi for a little bit. So how long have you lived here in Kalihi then?
I'd say a good 7.
So what do you feel this community needs most? What's one thing that you would really like to help this district, District 30? What would you do in the legislature?
There are several things. First of all, I'm concerned, Kalihi has a population of approximately 35,000, and it tends to have 86% that are college graduates. Pretty much divided in terms of male and female. But I'm seeing a growing number of children who are being raised in poverty. That becomes generational and long-term. And I really want to jump on that. I have a 5-point program that I would like to institute for Kalihi. One of which is that I'd like to have a consortium, first of all, of our members of the district. And that consortium, people would register for their households. And from their households, we would actually have them participate in a survey, actually a lotto, that a certain amount of households would participate in a lotto. And then once their house is selected, then whenever, as an elected official, I had concerns about an issue, they would know all of the issues that are straight up that they had communicated to me. They would be able to voice their opinion through the lotto, through the survey. They would be able, the household would be given a computer, they would be able to punch in on where they stand. And I'd be able to do percentages of how many people feel this issue, how many people feel that issue. It's a form of direct access. And from there, then I would be able to make a decision. And when I went in front of my colleagues, I'd be able to say, District 30's opinion about this matter is such and such and such. This is where we stand. Also, I would want to do, as a part of that 5-point program, is I would want to do an assessment of the employment connection that they have with corporations. Let me give you an example. There are a number of individuals in District 30 that are in the hotel restaurant industry, and I would want to know where they are. And the reason why I would want to know where they are is because there are a lot of companies, like for example Sheraton, who have partnerships, who have philanthropic components of their corporation, but we don't know about them. And some of those philanthropic and partnerships is that their employees can do 5 months of volunteer work in a school of their choice. We don't know that. We need to have an assessment of that. They often, a lot of corporations often donate monies. You, if you work for Sheridan, you want to do some volunteer work at Kalihi Kai Elementary, and Kalihi Kai Elementary needs computers, toilet paper, any kind of need that's unmet. That employee can go back to that place that they work at and say, look, I'm doing X amount of volunteer works. You were getting paid, you were even getting paid by that company to go and do the volunteer work, okay? And this is a need that's unmet in my child's school. We don't have that connection yet, and we need to.
So how is that something that you need the legislature to do? That sounds a lot like a community organizing kind of program or something, but and then how would you sort of use the legislative process to make that happen, where you have to convince not only your Republican colleagues, but now you have to get past the Democrats?
I will talk about the success that is happening all throughout the United States. Let me give you an example. Twin City, Wisconsin, Twin City, all in there. So that's what, Milwaukee and all that. What they've done is that Scotch Guard Company is there, okay? And Scotch Guard has that partnership, and Scotch Guard has that scholarship and that philanthropic part. We would give them incentives, first of all, to raise those concerns, identify themselves, and either we would give them some kind of tax incentive for them to do it more openly, and they would get credit. For example, when you do volunteer work, did you know that your volunteer work has a dollar sign attached to it?
I did not.
There is a national organization that plots your volunteer, your worthiness, or how much 1 hour of volunteer work that you do. And they put it into a certain amount that can be equal to the donation. 1 hour of volunteer work here in Hawaii, the last time that I checked, was about $50-something, $52. 1 hour of volunteer work to a company that you do volunteer work with is equivalent to that. This would encourage more volunteerism, and this would be an incentive for the legislature to promote that to the various companies that are doing that, and it would be an incentive for more companies to do that.
So the legislature, one of the things that we've been interested in, that we've been writing about, is sort of trying to get the legislative process a little more transparent, a little more open. How would you go about doing that? What would you work on in the legislature to get people to really understand what's happening there?
Well, there are a lot of dynamics and issues that are happening here in Hawaii that we really need to check. For example, nepotism. That often stifles a lot of growth, hiring some of the best people. People become frustrated and walk away from companies. There's no incentive to stay there. Nepotism is one issue. I think we also need to check double dipping. Double dipping is where you work for, let's say, the state for 20 years, you retire, you receive a retirement package. Then you turn around and get the same job with the federal, okay? So you're pulling two sources of salary and retirement from the same thing. How that affects us is that UH Manoa students who have student loans to pay back, that if they can't find employment here locally, they have to end up going to the mainland to find employment because they're trying to pay back their student loans. We need to check some of these things so that our students stay here. We cannot afford a brain drain. And if we're concerned about stopping the dwindling population, okay, which affects us in getting congressional monies, federal monies, state monies, and all that kind of stuff. Those are some of the things that we need to do, just initially. And I try to jump on the nepotism, I try to jump on the double dipping. And quiet as it's kept, there are now people that are promoting meritocracy in our legislature. And meritocracy is nice for the first generation, but then those guys that were the recipients of the first generation only assist their relatives. So there are certain things that we need to check.
Can you give us an example of that you've seen?
For example, Singapore has a meritocratic, and they noticed that, as I just shared, that the first generation that benefits from meritocracy or meritocratic, and that's based on hiring the individuals who are the smartest and the brightest. But the backfall is, are they the most sensitive to the needs of other individuals? And that's an issue. So we need to, if we adapt a meritocratic policy here, we need to have it specialized and more sensitive to the dynamics of being in an American society, and particularly being in a Hawaiian culture.
Okay, so if you were elected to the legislature, what would be the committees you would want to be on? And then what would be one of the first things that you would do day one of the legislature?
Day one, I would like to be on one of the business things, because, we're all about business. I would want us to, New York Times did several years ago, and the story has been repeating and repeating and repeating, that Hawaii has a reputation of not being a business-friendly environment. Okay? I don't know why we haven't pursued a public relations firm that says, okay, if our relationship to business is not good, what do we do to improve it? I also have a moratorium on business license fees. I would also promote minority-owned and operated businesses here in Hawaii. We have such a diverse culture here. And everybody in the United States is looking for diversity. Well, who's the most diverse population? Who's the most diverse state? We should be doing all of these things for all the corporations, for the branding images and all that kind of stuff. You need to come here. If you want a diversity agenda, knock on our door, because we got it already and we can do this.
Okay. Questions from the audience at all?
She's smiling. She's shaking her head. Why?
Yeah.
Am I okay, or am I all right, or am I on the money?
You did great.
Thank you.
PM, it has been delightful to chat with you. I'm really glad you came tonight.
I'm so thankful that you've given me the audience to be able to share. And, in wrapping up, I have one thing that I wanted to share with you. Brand new legislatures, they take an oath. And may I read a portion of it? Because I want to be able to get it right.
Sure.
It goes, I solemnly swear in the presence of Almighty God that I will faithfully support the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, and conscientiously and impartially discharge the duties as a member of the legislature and an officer of the government of the state of Hawaii. As a candidate for Hawaii Legislative District 30, it would be my honor to serve you and I humbly ask for your vote. Mahalo and aloha.